the Shepherd's Lodge.
And I am involved
in the Shepherd's Lodge.
And I am involved with the Shepherd's Lodge.
I am
Involved with the Shepherd's Lodge.
I'm involved in the Shepherd's Lodge. What about you?
In this bulletin, church groups slam Australia's federal budget. New Zealand Anglicans move towards same-sex marriage. And hope floats in Papua New Guinea.
This is In Focus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, great to have you with us on Record in Focus this week. And it's nice to have you back at the news desk, Danielle. You had a real up and down over the last couple of weeks, didn't you?
Yeah, we certainly have, Kent. I was off in New Zealand for the Manawatu regional event. We had about 600 people and a lot of them on fire for Jesus, which was just amazing. The bittersweet to that was that my beloved grandmother passed away while I was there. And so, of course, we've had funerals and family time. But I'll tell you what, Kent, it really is reassuring to know that whatever we walk through, that we have a wonderful God who doesn't leave us alone.
Praise God. And it's great to have you back, Danielle. And now we've got a special treat in store for you today, an interview with Dr. Arlene Taylor, author, speaker and brain function specialist. You know, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And to tell you the truth, Danielle, I am a bit fearful because it looks like finally I get to have my head examined. Well, we'll see anyway.
I'll tell you what, Kent, I think you should just harden up because I think they won't find out anything you don't already know.
We'll see.
Now, of course, we've got James Standish with us later in the show for Freedom in Focus, talking about the sectarian violence that's tearing Nigeria apart, but not before the news.
All yours, Danielle.
Thanks, Kent. The response of churches and other Christian organisations to the federal government's budget has mainly ranged from disappointment to outrage, with only a few ticks of approval. Christian aid and welfare groups have been particularly scathing, saying that the government's attempts to balance the books will be done at the expense of vulnerable Australians as well as the world's poor. According to the Eternity newspaper, there's some concern that the handover of responsibility for education funding to state governments will threaten the delicate balance between state and independent schools. On the positive side, a number of Christian organisations have welcomed the continuation of financial support for the embattled school chaplains program, even as its future hangs in the balance at the High Court. And the creation of a new medical research fund also drew support. Health experts are warning that Australia is facing a tsunami of chronic disease as new research reveals young people are leading the way in choosing junk food instead of fruit and vegetables. Results from the Australian Health Survey suggest that Australians eat 30% less fruit and veg than they did 15 years ago. Only 7% of respondents said they include the recommended 5 daily servings of vegetables in their diet.
First of all, processing food condenses the calories. So the processed food has a lot more calories, therefore we put on more weight. The second one is we're removing a lot of the nutrients that God put into that food. So we're not getting all of the benefits from the food when we process it.
According to the Sydney Morning Herald, a number of health experts are calling for a crackdown on junk food advertising and renewed efforts to establish a healthy star rating labelling system for packaged foods. And still on health issues, the City of Melbourne is discussing a controversial plan to make the CBD the world's first completely smoke-free city within 3 years. According to 9MSN, the council has already approved smoking bans in 6 areas after seeing strong community support for the idea.
I'm not surprised because the dangers of smoking are well established. And a lot of people today don't want to be smelling smoke, don't want to be brushing aside the smoke while they're having their meals and that sort of thing. And a lot of them are quite concerned about the health of their children, as in passive smoking.
Not everyone is keen, however, with the Victorian Premier Denis Napthine describing a ban across the entire city centre as entirely unworkable and entirely unreasonable. The Anglican Church in New Zealand and Polynesia has put into place a 4-year process that will allow clergy to formally bless same-sex relationships if they choose to do so. According to Taonga News, a liturgy will be written and policies will be developed that will both allow same-sex blessings and protect Anglican ministers who dissent, though not everyone agrees the protection will work. The change has caused dismay in some quarters, with some Anglicans saying they will leave the church because the new policy violates Scripture. Others have pledged to stay and fight. New Zealand's Parliament legalised same-sex marriage last year. However, no Pacific Island nation has made similar moves. And in another change of policy for the Anglican Church in New Zealand and Polynesia, the General Synod has voted to stop supporting the fossil fuel industry through its investments and will sell all its shares in fossil fuel companies by 2016. According to Anglican News, the regional body is the first in the worldwide Anglican communion to move in this direction. Support for the vote was strong amongst Pacific Island delegates, some of whom are reminded on a daily basis of the impact of climate change and rising sea levels. But the manager of the church's pension fund warned that he is legally bound to produce consistent financial returns for members, a requirement that may slow or stall any major divestments. The Vatican has joined the United Nations in expressing opposition to the development and use of lethal autonomous weapons systems, otherwise known as killer robots. The world's leading militaries are increasingly relying on remote-controlled vehicles for dangerous tasks such as clearing mines and targeting terrorists. But with artificial intelligence technologies gradually improving, it's becoming more common for robots to make strategic decisions without human input. But placing the power of life and death in the design of a robot goes too far, according to Vatican representatives. They say killer robots, whatever their programming, will lack the ability to make truly moral decisions. Seventh-day Adventist leaders in Germany have made a formal apology to a breakaway group who split from the church in the early months of the First World War over the issue of military service. Members of the breakaway group, the Seventh-day Adventist Reform Movement, now number about 60,000 around the world. According to APD, the Adventist leaders say the church in 1914 was wrong to encourage members to join the armed forces, to bear arms and to fight on the Sabbath, even though the denomination already had a strong tradition of conscientious objection. In an official statement, the church leaders also expressed regret at the harsh treatment of dissenters and the judgmental language used by their predecessors at the time. Frustration with the slow progress of relief and rebuilding efforts after last month's devastating floods is believed to be the cause of 2 nights of riots in the Solomon Islands capital, Honiara.
So the assistance that has been provided so far, they're not happy with it. They want more. People just go and burn down their business or just storm into shops. So right now shops are closed early, even gas stations. We don't know exactly what the next step will be, so we're just observing.
According to the ABC, local police are out in force to prevent any further violence, property damage or looting. There are still more than 4,000 people living in evacuation centres around the region. After 34 years in service, a medical ship operated by Youth with a Mission is being retired and replaced by a $6.5 million catamaran, the MV Amari. The new ship will work throughout the islands of Papua New Guinea, providing medical services, health advice and community development to remote coastal communities. The MV Amari can accommodate up to 100 people and will be outfitted with an operating theatre, dental clinic, outpatient facility, laboratory and lecture room. YWAM has obtained the ship under a lease to buy arrangement and needs to raise 5.5 million Aussie dollars to finalise the purchase. And that's it for the news this week.
Thanks, Danielle. I'll be back in a moment with James Standish and Freedom in Focus. Stay tuned.
Want to know the answers to your deepest questions? Log on to discoverycourses.com. 15 totally free courses discuss spirituality, lifestyle, archaeology and health. Make your personal discovery today at discoverycourses.com.
Hi, welcome back, and it's great to have James Standish with us for Freedom in Focus. How are you, James?
Doing well, man.
Now, James, for the last month, the world has discovered this terrorist group called Boko Haram. Now, we hear it in Focus. We've been talking about Boko Haram for a couple of years now, but
that's right.
But hello, you know, here they are on the world stage. I mean, terrible, you know, this kidnapping of these girls.
It's dreadful.
Yeah.
It's dreadful. You know what's interesting to me, Ken, is that this problem has been festering now, really for about 15 years.
Yeah.
In total, the interreligious battles, I guess you'd say, that has been going on in Nigeria has claimed about 14,000 lives.
Wow.
Okay, 14,000 lives, and no one has wanted to know about it.
Yeah.
It's been this sort of crisis that getting the U.S. government interested, getting the Australian government, the UK government, getting the UN involved. Everyone sort of said, "Oh well, you know, it's in Nigeria. It's really an ethnic thing. You know, let's just leave it go. We've got other things that are more important." Now these school kids have been abducted, and everyone's like, "Whoa, what's going on in Nigeria?" Kent, 14,000 people are dead.
Yeah, and no one seemed to notice.
And no one seemed to notice. It's just astonishing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's incredible. The Australian government, I believe, has now suddenly decided that Boko Haram is a terrorist organisation and has listed them.
And the US and the UK, and now France is convening something way beyond time. Now, it turns out that I went to Nigeria when I worked for the US government in 2009, and I went to Abuja and Kano and Kaduna.
Wow, these cities that keep coming up.
Cities that keep coming up. I didn't get to go to Jos, which is another city that had a lot of problems. And the stories that we were told and the people that we met with, it was clear that this was going to get worse, not better. And so when we came back to Washington, we met with all kinds of people on the Hill and the White House and the State Department. Everyone sort of gave you the time of day, but nothing of real concrete happened. People were distracted. Now the First Lady of the United States has put out a video about these girls, which is great. All I can say is it's good to see that you guys are interested now. It would have been really helpful if you would have started working on this back in 2009.
So now that West African nations are also starting to wake up to what's been happening in their midst.
Because it's a regional problem.
Yeah, sure.
Now, some people have looked at this and said, well, what's really happening here is an ethnic problem. And of course, there are ethnic issues that are also involved, but it is also a religious issue. And it's not a coincidence that the girls that were taken were primarily from Christian families.
Yeah, 90%, some reports said,
And that they've been shown in Islamic dress, and that there's this whole we've converted to Islam thing going on. Obviously, not all Muslims are in favour of this. This is aberrant behaviour.
Well, it's quite the opposite, James. I think Muslims have actually been targeted by Boko Haram.
Right.
If you don't toe the line,
you know, extremists always target their own community as well, because they feel threatened by people who have a different sort of take than they do. But yeah, there is a religious dimension. Unless you acknowledge that dimension, unless you understand that dimension, there's no way you're going to be able to deal with this and deal with it effectively.
Yeah, well, I guess it'll be interesting to see, you know, what all this talk and hot air that we're now hearing, you know, what is that going to do in terms of concrete action on the ground?
Well, I'm hoping and praying that something's done, not just for these girls, but definitely for these girls. I mean, my heart goes out to them. I have daughters of my own. I mean, to see kids who are mistreated like this, but also for the families that go across that region who've been targeted. 14,000 dead is too many. It's time to get a handle on this, and it's time for our community and our global community to really focus in on Nigeria and that band right across Africa where Islam meets Christianity, and try to deal much more effectively with the violence and growing violence there.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for your time and those insights today, James.
Pleasure.
We'll be back straight after the break.
Signs of the Times, a magazine for a world on the brink. And this month in Signs, an allegory, how Jesus can change our lives, why and how to eat gluten-free. Andreas Karlstadt, Protestant reformer that history forgot. Melissa Doyle on being a mother and life after sunrise. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Hi, welcome back. How much do you know about how your brain works? Well, if you're like me and the answer's not very much, we're all very lucky because with me today is Dr. Arlene Taylor, brain function specialist. How are you, Arlene?
I'm glad to be here, thank you.
So how long have you been involved in this brain function area of interest and research?
My mother tells me that when I was 5 years old, she found me in my father's study looking at an atlas of the brain.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know where that came from, cellular memory perhaps, but I've been interested my whole life. And since the advent of brain scans, when we can now actually watch your brain functioning while you're still alive, it's just marvelous information. I'm so glad I'm still in my career.
Well, so these are the sort of tests where they ask you to read or to remember something or to do something, and they watch which part of your brain actually lights up. And wow, that's incredible. So how long have you then been involved in this as a profession?
I've probably been lecturing on brain function for 50 years.
Goodness. Okay.
Well, yes, I know. Late 1800s is when I started.
That's a lot of expertise. That's the point I was trying to make.
And at first, you know, all we knew about the brain was observations, and that started with Hippocrates, who said, you know, there are 4 chunks to the cerebrum, and he was right.
Okay.
And that was the beginning of temperament, you know, sanguine, phlegmatic, you know, choleric, melancholy. And now that we can actually watch our brains functioning, a lot of what he said was accurate, but we are now getting, of course, much more refinements, and this is now being called the age of the brain.
That's interesting you say that, because I'm really noticing that there seems to be a lot of brain stuff going on in the public arena lately. I mean, I read a book recently by Dr. Timothy Jennings, you know, neuropsychiatrist, looking at the brain and spirituality. Barbara Arrowsmith-Young, you know, looking at education and the brain. A lady from South Africa, what's her name? Dr. Caroline Leaf, you know, switching on your brain. Is it a bit of a flavour of the month thing?
Oh, I don't think so. I think that we are now actually being able to figure out brain function. And if you pay attention and apply it practically, then you can start using your brain by design instead of just hit and miss. Sometimes you get it right, you're not sure what you did to get it right, so you can't replicate it, or you really mess up badly and you're not sure how you messed up, so you keep doing it again. You can actually live your brain by design in terms of your behaviors and what you're pursuing, and that's really exciting.
Well, this is the thing that I think is really surprising, you know, because we're hearing this word, you know, neuroplasticity, you know, come around. You can change your brain, because in the past, I'm sure I remember hearing, oh, your neurons are set, you know, once you kill your neurons, they're gone forever, there's nothing you can do about it, you know, all this sort of stuff.
Well, partly that is true. When you come out the chute, you pretty much have your neurons. You'll lose some of them in pruning. And we know that there are parts of your brain, like the hippocampus in that middle section that is your search engine. You can kill brain cells fairly easily based on your lifestyle, whether you are using inappropriate substances, not taking care of your brain. But yes, your brain is hardware and software, if you will. And we can do a lot about the software. And that's habits, changing your behaviors, and so on. Largely a choice. Many people don't think there's anything they can do, so they use it as an excuse. But there's lots you can do.
So it's not simple as this is the way I am. It is actually possible to teach an old dog new tricks, as they say.
Absolutely. May take them slightly longer, but sometimes not even that. Having said that, there's not a lot you can do about the hardware. So some things are set. You know, when I came out the chute, I happen to have an empathizing brain, which aligns with a female brain. Based on how you look, which may not mean anything.
Yeah.
But based on how you look, my guess would be that you have a systemizing brain that's more aligned with the male brain.
Okay.
But it could be, you see, that your brain doesn't match your body. And then you'd have an empathizing brain in a male body. So you can't always tell by looks. But so there's some things that you can't change, but you can change tons of stuff about your behaviors, and you can learn almost anything on the planet if you want to put the work in.
So there are actually some differences between the male and the female brain in general, not every man and woman, like you're saying.
Duh.
There are, yeah. Well,
huge.
Yeah, okay.
We just got something called connectome research, which is DTI modalities, and it shows how the connections in the male brain versus the female brain run. And in your brain, you've got lots of connections top to bottom in each hemisphere, but not very many crossing from one hemisphere to the other.
Okay.
My brain has almost all its connections crossing between the two hemispheres and just a few going up and down. Makes a huge difference on how behaviors are exhibited and what males do better and what females do better.
So how can the male brain and the female brain understand and relate to one another perhaps better than we do in this sort of men are from Mars, women are from Venus sort of perception we have?
Well, if you understand brain function, then you understand that we were really designed to be complementary, not antagonistic. But I will be able to do things that you don't do very well. And you're going to be able to do things that I don't do very well. For one thing, you've got way much stronger muscle function. Twice the upper body strength, 3 times the lower body strength. You can open the door for me and carry my suitcase anytime you want to, because you do that better than I do.
Yeah. What about spirituality, Arlene? Because we sort of hear this research where they say, oh, if you stimulate a certain part of the brain, people have a sense of presence in the room, you know, which proves, they say, that the idea of God and having any sense of God's presence is just an illusion. It's your brain playing tricks on you. But other people see it quite differently. How do you understand the brain and spirituality?
Well, the brain can play tricks on you. For example, what people call déjà vu, you know, I had a past life. I don't think that's got anything to do with any possibility of a past life, but what it does have to do with is that your ancestors live within your body from the past 3 or 4 generations as cellular memory.
Right.
And that will push you toward feeling comfortable in situations where you personally have never been, but one of your ancestors may have been.
Wow.
Now, in the temporal lobes, especially the right temporal lobe, there is some sense that that's the part of the brain that helps you have mystical experiences, meaning relating to a higher power that you've never seen and so on. And so sometimes people can misinterpret what that means. Whatever the human brain is, and we have a lot yet to discover, it's relational, it is sexual, having nothing to do with exhibiting sexual behaviors, but we are sexual beings, and it is spiritual. What doesn't seem to be innate is being religious. The brain is very spiritual. Religion is a choice to affiliate with a group of people. And so those can be very separate. There are many people who are exceedingly spiritual, who believe there's a higher power, who feel awe in the presence of nature and wonderful music and so on.
But the structures of religion just leave them cold.
But the structures leave them cold, especially if the style doesn't match their brain's innate giftedness.
Now, I heard one of your presentations in which you said if you read aloud, it's actually better for your brain than if you read silently. Does the same go for prayer? If you pray aloud, should that affect your brain more than just praying silently in your mind?
I don't know any research specifically related to prayer, but I would think yes for this reason. Because when you pray silently, it is a mental construct. When you read a paragraph to yourself silently, a little pinpoint of light shows up in each of those 4 chunks. But when you read aloud, now you have to change what you're seeing into articulated sound, which involves different parts of the brain, and certainly your tongue and your mouth and your teeth. And so 80% of those chunks light up, which is why that's now considered an anti-aging strategy. On top of that, you are now hearing the sound. So it becomes a whole brain experience, basically. And when you read aloud, you can put that into long-term memory, the information, much faster than when you read silently.
So this probably explains why I find that when I pray aloud, I tend to be able to concentrate better on what I'm saying than if I just try to pray silently. So
you could get perhaps more easily distracted.
Wow.
But the thing is, all you know is your own brain.
Sure.
And we tend to think that because our brain works this way, theirs must work this way too. Every brain on the planet is different.
Yeah, sure. Now, just before we finish, because we are just about out of time, can you give us maybe 2-3 tips for a healthier brain? How can we make the most of, you know, this gift we've been given of our brain?
The best thing you can do is live what we call a high-level healthiness lifestyle. If you take care of your brain, what you do for your brain also supports your immune system. And we now believe that that could probably, all things being equal, extend your life 25 years. Many people die much sooner because they haven't taken care of their brain. So you want to avoid trauma, toxins. If you smoke, stop. If you don't, never start. You want to keep your brain well hydrated because you can actually get brain tissue to shrink and pull away from your skull when you don't have enough water, and that's your primary beverage. Avoid soft drinks, period, but water, so that you keep your brain nicely hydrated. Plenty of sleep. Every brain needs its own amount of sleep. I need 9 hours solid.
Wow.
And if I get that, I can go like a house afire. If I lose an hour, I'll know it. If I lose 2, you'll know it.
Yeah, okay.
And then lean toward a Mediterranean cuisine, toward vegetarianism. So there's other things we can do, but that's it in a nutshell. 30 minutes of challenging brain stimulation every day, 30 minutes of good physical exercise, because no muscles in the brain. You need the physical exercise to whoosh the blood through.
Sure.
10 minutes of reading out loud a day, and then some of these other things. And hey, I'm aiming to be a minimum of 120 years old.
Go for it.
With good mental, emotional, physical, spiritual function.
Love it. Hey, well, thanks so much for your time. And if you're interested in knowing more about Dr. Arlene Taylor and her work on the brain, you can check out her website, arlenetaylor.org. The address is right there on your screen. Newsletters, your blog, some books you've written, it's all there. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We'll be back straight after the break.
So you think you've got your future all planned out, right? Or maybe you're not sure yet. What you want to do, who you want to be. A great education matters. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Well, there you go, Danielle. Now you know a little bit more about the old...
Yes, and just for the record, it doesn't really make that noise.
Oh, yes, it does. I heard it.
But what a character is Arlene Taylor.
I know, she's a screamer. I thought she was hilarious, actually, but very well worth listening to as well. Great information.
Absolutely. And of course, it's been great to have you with us. If you'd like to share one of today's segments with a friend or the full half hour, it is, of course, all there at our website, record.net.au.
Check it out. We'll see you next time on Record in Focus. God bless.
Catch you later.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's so wonderful to see you this evening. Thank you so much for coming, and so happy that I can be able to have this opportunity to be able to share the health segment with you. I'm sure as we go through the nights that is still coming, we will enjoy our fellowship together with all the messages that will come. Our health talk this evening is entitled, You Are Special. I don't know whether you realize how special and how complex you are. You have been created by God in such an amazing way. And so that is why I'm saying here to you this evening that you are very, very special indeed. The human body is the result of an intricate craftsmanship, unattached in design, unmatched in design, unparalleled in the integrity of its functional systems, and unfathomable in the depth of subtle and natural emotions. Now, when you read that, you appreciate the fact that the human body is such an intricate craftsmanship. God made us in such an amazing way, and it is so important that we realize and that we understand that. Let me share some interesting facts with you this evening. The moment God breathed into you the breath of life, your body became an autopilot miracle. Your heart beats. It beats about 70 to 80 beats per minute, and your heart would beat at least 40 million times in 12 months. And you don't even think about it. You breathe. You breathe about 16 to 18 times a minute, and at rest. And so you breathe at least 9 million times every 12 months. And we don't even think about it. We don't even stop and say, how many times am I breathing? It all happens automatically. And that's how the Lord has made each one of us. All of these functions, there's many more that occur around the clock, happen with no conscious effort on your part or thought on your part or on my part. It happens automatically. A wide variety of powerful chemicals help to regulate this delicate balance of your miraculous body, and all participate in this exquisite chemical symphony. And the music breeds harmony, which doctors refer to as homeostasis. And so we've been created in an amazing way. We are so precious. We are so important in the eyes of God. Now, let me just take you to this little section of the human body and just appreciate how complex it looks like. This is the neck. You can see some white structures there. You can appreciate the big blood vessel that comes from the heart that supplies blood to the face and to the brain. It's just so complex. It is amazing how God has been able to put all these structures together. Now, that's a picture of somebody that has drawn that picture. Now, come with me to the real picture here. This is the real human being. This is a patient of mine that is lying on the table with a big tumor in the neck. And so we had to do surgery to remove that tumor. Now, when you look at this patient, it's exactly the same as what you're looking at in this picture. So let me just go through it just very quickly so that you understand what I'm talking about. This, as you can see right up there, right in the middle there, is what we call the big red. This is the big red, as you can appreciate here. Okay, this is the blood vessel that supplies blood to the brain and to the face. Now, if I were to show you another important structure, you see that structure there? That little structure is a special nerve that supplies the tongue. So if I were to cut that, you would know what would happen to your tongue. It won't move right, and you won't be able to swallow properly. And if you see this one going down there, this is another very important nerve. We call this the vagus nerve. It's a very important nerve that helps digestion in the tummy. It also sends a little nerve back into the neck we call the recurrent laryngeal nerve that supplies the voice box. So that if I were to cut that, you would lose your voice. And so look and appreciate, dear brothers and sisters, how God has created you. You are just so precious. You are so amazing in the way that God has made you. If you're amazed at the neck, let me just share with you some amazing facts about the brain. Your brain, dear brothers and sisters, is the most complicated organ in the whole of the universe. There is nothing as complicated as the human brain. Let me tell you why. This is very interesting. The human brain is a 1.4 kilogram mass of jelly-like tissues. It is soft. If you were to handle it, your fingers would go right into it because it is very soft, very malleable. Okay, and so, but it's one of the most complex of all known living structures. There's up to 1 trillion nerve cells that make up the brain. Okay, 1 trillion nerve cells that make up the brain and coordinate all the physical actions and the mental processes that happens inside the human brain, and which controls all the body parts and all the activities that takes place inside the human body. Oh yes, and this is a picture of an example of a brain cells, and there's 1 trillion nerve cells altogether, as I've mentioned already. Now, there's something else that is very amazing about the brain, and I'd like to share this with you. Each nerve cell, 1 trillion, is connected to another nerve cell, not in a one-to-one connection, but 1 to 10,000 different connections altogether. Okay, now that's amazing. That means that you have more connections in your skull than there are stars in the universe. Oh, dear brothers and sisters, this is amazing information. And so this is just an example of how the nerves are connected inside the brain. You can appreciate the complexity of the human brain, which is in you and which is in me. We thank God for the way that He has created each one of us. It is interesting to note that the brain produces power. It can light up. What does it say there? It can light up electricity, like it can light up a bulb. But it is also the most expensive real estate in your body. It is only about 2% of your body weight, but it uses about 20 to 30% of the energy that you produce every day when you eat. Okay, and so it is just so interesting to note. Now, I have mentioned a little bit earlier that it produces power. It can generate about 10 to 23 watts of power that can be able to light up a small bulb. Okay, and so that's some amazing things about the brain that you can know and understand. Now, we are different from other creatures because of the brain that God has given to each one of us. It is the power and the structure of the brain that makes us different from other creatures. And so it's so important to know and understand this. Now, in awe, when David saw all this, he was amazed, and he simply said, I will praise thee, for I am so fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, that my soul knoweth right well. I'd like to just say to us this evening, dear brothers and sisters, that you are so special in the eyes of God. God has made you so special, so valuable you are in the eyes of God, that it is so important that we realize that. We have a responsibility, in fact, to take care of this wonderful body that God has made. Now, I'd like to move on now, talking about the complexity of the human body. There is more to health than just the structure of the brain. There is more to health than just the anatomy of the neck. So let us ask the question this evening, what is health? It's an interesting question that each one of us needs to understand. So let me take you back to creation. In Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7, it says that God formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. It says here simply that God brought some dust together, He formed it, He breathed into it the breath of life, and man became a living soul. It is interesting to note here, dear brothers and sisters, that in the act of creating man, and in the act of breathing into the nostrils of Adam, God instilled into man life, health, and vitality. Very important to realize that. This is crucial to our understanding of who we are as people. Now, in Scripture, there is only one word that I can recall that comes closest to defining what is health. All right? And it's the word shalom. It's a common greeting word that is used in the East. Okay? And when they see you, they will say shalom. They would say shalom Shabbat. Israelis, this is a common Hebrew language. But there is more to it than just greetings. All right? And so I'd like to take you through the meaning of shalom in attempting to help each one of us understand what is health in Scripture. I'd like to read to you this text which says that if God will be with me and will watch over me in this journey that I'm taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely or shalom or in peace to my Father's house, then the Lord will be my God. This is Jacob. This is in Exodus, saying to God, God, if you attend to my physical needs, to my social needs, to my emotional needs, and to my spiritual needs, God, you will become my God. I will love you. I will adore you as my God. Now, there's something interesting here that we need to understand. Shalom here is understood to be the result of God's presence in the life of Jacob. It includes the idea of divine companionship, protection, and the provision of food and clothes for Jacob during his journey. And so let's see this a little bit more. Shalom, therefore, in Scripture means completeness, soundness, personal welfare, health, prosperity, wholeness. And if we look down a little bit there, it says to be whole, to be complete, to have physical and spiritual resources sufficient to one's need. And it encompasses a state of physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being. And it thus enlarges our understanding of health, dear brothers and sisters, as wholeness of life. So that if you're well, you say, you don't have any sickness, like if you don't have tuberculosis, it doesn't mean that you're healthy, because if your relationship with your wife or husband is not good, you are not healthy. There's these 4 dimensions, all working together, that is what we would term as shalom or wholeness of health. And so, let's see that, because I think that is very important. And so when we talk about health in the context of shalom, it simply means that I am physically sound, I am mentally sound, I am socially sound in my relationship with others, but at the same time, my relationship with God is also healthy and sound and good. This, in Scripture, is what health is all about. It is so important that we understand this. We see the similar concept in the life of Jesus, because it says in Luke chapter 2 and verse 52, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and man. And we can understand here that wisdom relates to the mind, the mental side of our being, the emotional side of our being. Stature is physical. Favor with God, our spiritual relationship with God, and favor with man. And so in the life of Jesus, we see shalom being expressed, wholeness of life. It is interesting, dear brothers and sisters, that science has discovered the concept of shalom and has agreed to it. And let me just show you what I mean by that. Now, this slide looks very complicated, but it simply means this. And I'm going to explain this a little bit more as we come to the end of our presentation this evening. You will see here that there is a relationship between religion or spirituality and physical disease and health. Okay, it shows us here that going to church, having a good, strong relationship with God can influence our physical body in a significant way. All right. Now, let me give you a few examples here so that you understand. Now, this is a study that was done in America that studied religious activity, the relationship between religious activity and blood pressure. Okay? You will note here some very important things. Number one, you will see on the first graph, all right, the blood pressure of those people that never attend church or attend church very few times, their blood pressure is much higher than people who attend church more and who read their Bible every day. You find that interesting, don't you? So there is a connection between the spiritual and the physical dimension. God has made it that way. Let me show you another one, because I think this is very interesting. This is about churchgoers living longer. Let me read it to you. They studied about 2,025 people, aged 55 and up, to see what factors would be the best predictors of living long or longevity. They followed them up for 5 years, and the most significant factor predicting who was still alive was their ability to be able to attend religious services. Now, this is interesting to note. It is amazing to note that spirituality impacts physical health. I've got more studies, but we don't have time to share those. But it is very important, therefore, to understand the concept of shalom. One dimension affects the other dimension. And so, let us read this, because I think this is important. Health, therefore, is more than just the absence of disease or feeling good. Health is the ability of all people within the community to reach full physical, mental, social, and spiritual potential, living in safety with vigor, purpose, and harmony, meeting personal needs, meeting community responsibilities, adapting to change, and having a trusting and caring relationships with their God and with our fellow men. In this definition, you find the concept of wholeness of life. Social relationships, mind relationship, physical body being attended to, and our relationship with God. It is so important that we understand health in the context of wholeness or shalom. That's very important to understand. Now, if that is shalom, if that is health, if health is the four dimensions all working together in unity, what is disease? Now, this is an interesting question. Some of us might think that disease is having diabetes. Yes, that's an example of a disease. But I think there is more to disease when we define disease in the context of shalom. And so let's look very quickly here. Disease, what is disease? May I suggest to you this evening, in the context of shalom, that disease is a broken relationship, a disharmony, absence of shalom, and not merely the presence of a physical ailment or a disease process. What I'm basically saying here is this: I can be well, or I can be sick. I can have malaria, for example, and I'm sick. But if I am sick with malaria, and I have some problems in my family as well, I have physical disease and I have social disease at the same time. So I have double dose disease. You understand what I'm saying? It is very important to understand health in that context. So it is a broken relationship, a disharmony, absence of shalom, and not merely the presence of a physical ailment or a disease process. And so it is important. And so we can categorize diseases in that context. So we talk about physical diseases. We have so much diabetes, heart disease, and problems of that nature around us. We also have a lot of social diseases around us. When we look at the world, there's so much problem in the world. Social disharmony, you can call that social disease. Mental disease is very common today in our societies. There's so much worry, there's so much depression. But can I suggest to you as well that when our relationship with God is not firm and strong, we can also develop spiritual disease as well. And so, disease can be categorized in these 4 dimensions as well. All right. And so I think it is important to understand that as well. So, disease is not only having tuberculosis in the kidney, as you see here. We're draining pus here. Disease includes loneliness. Loneliness is a disease. This is a social disease. All right? Death is a social disease from social disharmony. We see disease not only in the context of the physical dimension, we see it in the context of the social dimension, in the mental dimension, and in the spiritual dimension as well. And so it's very important that we understand that. I thank God this evening that there is healing, that there is health, that there is disease. Yes, unfortunately, we suffer from it. But we thank God this evening that there is healing for people who live in the world. Now, I'd like to just share with you a little story here before we finish. There is a story in the book of John, chapter 5, and verse 1 to 15. Excuse me. Here was this crippled man. This is about a crippled man who was sitting beside this pool. We call it the Pool of Bethesda. And he was waiting for somebody to put him into the pool when the water shakes. But there was no friends to push him, to carry him and drop him into the pool when the water shakes. So he's been there for about 38 years. And one day Jesus comes and he sees this man and he said to him, "Do you want to be well?" And immediately the man responded by saying, "Yeah, but there's nobody who can put me into the pool." And Jesus simply said to him, "Arise, take up your bed, and walk." And I could imagine what happened then. You know, he's been there for 38 years. They haven't walked. There was only skin and bone. There was no muscles. But when Jesus made this miracle on this man, I could imagine the muscles regenerating, the skin stretching, the joints begin to move again. And this man was able to stand up. He was able to leap up. And he would say to himself, "Yes, I'm whole. I'm well. I've been healed." He has been healed physically. I'm sure he was so happy that he was smiling. He has been healed emotionally. In his mind, he's now so happy. He's been healed emotionally. I believe he was able to go to his family, look for his friends, and to show them that, yes, I am healed, I am well. He's been healed socially, in the social dimension. What about the spiritual dimension? The next day, Jesus met him at the temple. And when Jesus met him at the temple, he said to him, and this is the text that I've put up there, "See, you are well. Sin no more, so that nothing worse befalls you." You see, brothers and sisters, when God heals, He wants to heal you whole. Not just your physical disease. All right? If He were to heal you with just your physical disease, you would go back and do the same old practices again, eh? Jesus wants to heal you whole. When God heals, He heals you whole. In fact, He wants to restore shalom in your life and in my life. It is so important that we understand that. And so, to me, this is what health is all about. It is shalom, or experiencing wholeness of life. So crucial for us to understand this. I'd like to end with this little text. "If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in His sight, give heed to His commandments, and keep all His statutes, I will put none of these diseases on you, which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." It is so important that we heed the voice of the Lord, that we listen to His instructions, to His commands, to His advice to us on how we can be able to live a healthy life. God wants to heal you tonight. He wants to restore shalom in your life. May it be that you will allow Him to do that for you this evening. May God bless each one of you tonight.